Hi, Rachel Mead here. I'm the president and founder of Enhanced Prep, and I'm excited to spend some time with you today talking about one of the differentiators about what makes Enhanced Prep better than some of the other test prep organizations out there. And I want to talk about how we use data to drive our programs. The first thing I want to talk about is how Enhanced Prep uses data. And we believe in a three-pillar approach in order to help students maximize their standardized test prep scores. Pillar number one is content. We need to know punctuation rules. We need to know geometry formulas. There's vocabulary that comes into play. We have applications within reading and science that we need to understand. All of those pieces come together in a way that speaks to either, for example, the SAT or the ACT in an entirely different way than students are used to handling those concepts within their school-based setting. Pillar number two is strategies. And I define strategies as ways that we can help students get through questions faster without sacrificing any accuracy. As we know, these tests aren't just about how much you know, but it's how much you can show you know in a very limited amount of time in a stressful setting. The majority of students that take either the SAT or the ACT can only finish about two-thirds of the questions in the allotted time that they have. Less than 8% of all test takers have the ability to get to all of the questions. So our job is, how can we help you get through more questions to get more points into your point bucket? And game plan is, what do you do first? How much time do you spend? What do you move on to next? When do you guess and go? It's setting up each portion of the test to play to a student's strengths and skill sets in a way that allows them to maximize efficiency as they're moving through the sections within that time. So, as we move from there, let's talk more about the data that we consider important. Now, Enhanced Prep, I have developed a hybrid exam. It's half SAT, half ACT in one sitting, because we believe the number one most important thing that we can help a student do is determine which test they're better suited for. Now, every single college in the whole entire country gladly accepts the SAT. Every single college gladly accepts the ACT. There is not a single college in the US that has a preference. There is not a single college that's going to require both. Now, if you're looking to go to college outside of the US, that's a different conversation that we should definitely dig into together a little bit more. But we firmly believe that it is our ethical duty to help a student say yes to the right test. Ethical? You might be questioning why I'm using that word. Here's my take on that. If you are hiring us in order to help a student prepare for their exam, if we're not preparing for the right test, we're asking you to spend more money because it's going to take us longer to get there. We're asking the student to put in more sweat equity because it's going to take more time to get there. When we do a hybrid test, we're able to take a look at the test in the exact same setting, same day, same circumstances. We're able to get started with tutoring faster. So here's an example of some results from our hybrid exam. You can clearly see, based upon this, that the student has a much better overall accuracy within the ACT questions than they do the SAT questions. This also allows us as tutors to prioritize what sections we're working on first, and we can even get the data in which questions or question types the student had more challenges with. Now, I wish I could tell you that all of the companies out there take the time to have the discussion on SAT versus ACT. But I personally, in the years prior to starting Enhanced Prep, worked for organizations where I got in trouble based upon trying to have the conversation with parents and students of, I know you called for SAT tutoring, but is this the right exam? Or I know you were interested in the ACT, is this the right exam? Now, I'm not going to be petty enough to come through and mention their names and put them on blast right now. But if you are concerned that the organization you are working with or interested in working with has not proven to you that you are taking the right task, ask the hard questions. You can also go check out my LinkedIn profile for some more information about where I have worked previously. All right, so now we're moving on and we're working on that right test. Here's an example of our testing platform, thanks to our partners at ScoreSmart, for the SAT. And we're able to break down the accuracy between the modules, taking a look at module one, medium degree of difficulty. Depending upon that accuracy, they either move into a module two easy or a module two hard. This student did happen to move into the module two hards with both of these, but we can take a look at how many questions they got right, how many questions they got wrong, if there were any left unanswered, and what that's doing to their overall score. So again, a little bit more detail here in terms of that distribution of correct versus incorrect questions, slightly different from what you're going to see within, say, a blue book test or doing a pencil and paper test. The other thing that I love about this testing platform is it takes a look at how the student is using their time. Remember, I said pillar number three is our game plan. How is that time being used? Because we know we have to decrease the amount of time in order to get more time for students to move through more questions. So this versus par is a big data point that we at Enhanced Prep use. And why do we use this? It takes a look at how students in similar scoring bandwidths use their time. And when I'm looking at a situation like this, I can see that this student had really strong reading skills. And those reading buckets come into our craft and structure and our information and ideas. And I can see that they got through these questions dramatically faster than their peers that had that similar score range of a 700 on their verbal. However, on the flip side, when I look at the writing and language, both buckets here, the standard English conventions, which is the grammar, as well as the expression of ideas, which is transition based questions and research based questions, I can tell this student used a lot more time by that plus coming into play, over 5 extra minutes to get through the 14 grammar based questions. So while their accuracy was perfect, they went 14 out of 14. It's our job as tutors to come back and say, let's see if we can add in some strategies for you. We need to increase your confidence in terms of the answers that you're selecting so you're more comfortable choosing them faster, and give you some ways to get through these questions faster, because then we'd have some more time we could build into those reading based questions. We can see -3 minutes on one set, -4 minutes on another. If we could bank some additional time over there, we're going to be able to increase the accuracy that they had with those questions that they missed. So using data is a huge part of helping to drive these programs. We can do the same thing within the math. Again, we saw that math score previously, and we can come through and say, but where should we be spending our time? Well, with this student in particular, we can see we have a big opportunity to come through and help build that math score by working on some geometry-based questions. We want to work on that coordinate geometry, which is graphing. We also want to work on shape geometry. Maybe we need to refresh our triangles or our circles, or maybe it's our parabolas with our coordinate geometry. But it gives us good foundation to say, what does this student need? Because we are not a one size fits all. If you want that, you need to go someplace else, and you need to be willing to waste time and waste money. The more we customize programs to, does this student need content? Does this student need strategy? Does this student need game plan? Does the student have these pieces of the test mastered and we're not going to pay attention to them? As we're customizing these programs, this is what allows us to help students get those elite scores. And by elite scores, I mean our students are placing into the 1500s on their SAT consistently and 34s and higher on their ACT consistently, as long as they're willing to invest the effort and the energy. All right, so what else do we take a look at? Well, we also take a look at how they're doing on their practice tests versus how they're doing on their official exams. Now, there's some organizations out there that do believe that they're just going to drill and kill. They have the student do a practice test every single weekend and believe that just having them work through the questions enough is going to help increase that score. Well, that's just one part of what they need to do. Do they have their content down? Do they have their strategies down? Are they making best use of their time with an appropriate customized game plan for them when they're working through this section? And also, have they analyzed their errors? Why did they miss a question? Was it rushing? Did they misread it? Did they not know something in it? Did they make a careless error? If students aren't spending the time analyzing their errors with a tutor to help them guide them through this process, they can't expect that the next practice test they take is going to have a dramatic change. So here at Enhanced Prep, where we work with those elite scoring students, we do a practice test about every 8 to 12 hours of instruction. We don't want to create burnout with the students because this is an endurance game. This is a long distance marathon that we're working on to help them be able to get through this test accurately. But we do need to take a look at how they're putting all the pieces together. So here we can see that the student worked through a couple of their practice tests. You can see the dates with those. You can also see that they took both the October and the December official and were able to break down those results. So again, if I'm looking, let's say at the practice test this student took in June, I can see, wow, look at this. We've got a reading score of 35. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside, but we've got some work to do within the English, the math, and the science. Now, if a student like this had taken a practice test with a one size fits all company that's just going to open up a workbook and work from page 1 to page end, this program isn't going to work for them, right? There's going to be things that they already know. There's going to be things that they need to spend a little bit more time on. It's not using the data that this student needs. So then we came through, and after setting that reading aside, they had gained so much more confidence with their other sections. Look at this jump that we had in English, 26 to a 31, science from a 24 to a 31. But because we ignored that reading, it fell off a bit. So we needed to come back and refresh it. And we see the student came back and did a great job with that reading on their next couple of officials. So again, we need to customize the program based upon the data that the student is showing us. When they're taking a pencil and paper practice test, and here's a little bit about what our ACT pencil and paper practice tests look like. Now, we do have digital ACT, and we are able to get some great score reports in our partner platform, like I showed you previously with the SAT. But we want to take a closer look at how they're doing with their different pieces. Remember now, ACT has unscored questions, and while this student missed 12 questions overall, only 4 of them were scored. Ooh, we better take a closer look at that, right? Because this sounds like the student got a little bit lucky. I can also see the breakdown that the student is showing me between their usage and mechanics, which is their grammar rules, compared to their structure and organizational based concepts in their rhetorical skills. Pretty evenly spread here, but usage and mechanics questions go faster. And if every single question in this section has the same point value, what does that mean? Well, that means I need to help the student get more usage and mechanics points into their point bucket before I worry about coming back and getting those rhetorical skills questions into their point bucket. Because again, we have a limited amount of time. So this is also going to drive the data in terms of what concepts we can work on and should be working on. Punctuation, they did pretty good. We've got only one question missed there. Verbs, we've also got one question that was missed. Transitions, pronouns, words and context, lots of one-offs coming into play here. And then we've got our rhetorical skills. These are a couple of the bigger ones. And then they hit a perfect within their concise. All right, we're done working on concise questions right now. Now, you still might see some in your homework because we need to keep it fresh, but I don't need to waste tutoring time on it. But this also shows me, because I have so many one-offs, that this isn't a content issue. This probably also isn't a strategy issue. This means that the student missed some of the harder questions, Great job with the easy, great job with the medium. Some of the harder ones, maybe we need to analyze the phrasing a little bit more. Maybe we need to take a look and do a refresher on the common traps that the test writers put in. But because we don't have any glaring buckets and it's minor fine tuning, it's a totally different approach that I can take with this student compared to a student that had the same score that maybe missed almost all of their punctuation and verbs questions and hit everything else. Again, understanding the importance of customizing programs, not doing a one size fits all so that we can maximize the financial return and the return on investment for the student's study time. The sooner we can help the student hit those goal scores, the better it is for parents and students alike. And that's what we consider to be our ethical job to you. All right. This also shows me how they did within the section. And like I said, hey, they missed more questions in that unscored portion than they did overall. Now, here it just so happened that the unscored was the very last passage that they work on. That is not always the case. Sometimes the unscored is going to be earlier on. If this would have been an earlier, maybe passage one or passage two that was unscored, we would see a dramatically different English score because the student would have missed more scored questions. Now here, when I'm seeing a chunk like this come through at the end that was missed, this is telling me that the student's running out of time. So again, we need to come back and emphasize particular strategies, or we need to talk about which questions are most time consuming that they're going to guess on earlier in order to have more time for these straightforward questions that they're seeing at the end. So hopefully that helped you understand the importance of using data to drive tutoring programs. If you're out there shopping, ask companies the question, how do you use data? What data do you use? How does it affect your ability to customize programs? Because unfortunately, not everybody does customize. So again, if you want a tutoring program that is designed specifically for your student, their needs, their goals, and what we can do to help them maximize their score, make sure you're working with an elite company such as Enhanced Prep. We'll see you soon.